Trigger warning for this episode, my girls, gays, theys, and the men who hold our drinks for us. This is going to discuss death and suicide and things that are or may be triggering for you if you are dealing with those topics in a heavy way in your personal life, or if you just don't want to listen to that kind of shit. It is not super incredibly morbid. It's not like, I don't know how to explain it. Look, if you want to give it a try, great. If you don't even want to touch it, fantastic. My thoughts are with you. Another episode will be out next week. Hell yeah. Fight on. Let's ride. And I adore you for clicking regardless. Kisses.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rebuttal Podcast. My name is, as always, Reb Maisel, and we have had a break for a whole month, okay? 2023 was our year. It was the year this podcast started. It was the year that I quite literally did about 800 things that weren't even on my bucket list of things to do, like ever. And then they fell into my lap and I did them. And I, as I've said before, my 13-year-old self would cry and scream and sob and think I was just the coolest ever. And one of those was to start this podcast. Oh my God. I am just floored at how big it's gotten. And when I say big, I don't mean big as in like changing locations big, because like we've had the same back hizzy, okay? The same background, the same setup, the same situation this whole time. The same, director, producer, writer, editor, me, Girlykins, not for want of like resources, honestly, to be able to do all of that and to have people, et cetera, et cetera. I know many of people, including my talent agent, has been like, we can help you. I just this has just been my child, my baby. And, it lives or burns with me. And I definitely wanted to make sure that what I did and what I had for all of you, that you guys asked me for, honestly, based on all of the cases that I knew were in my head and I wanted to talk about, I wanted to make sure that it was done the way that I wanted to do it. And I wanted to make sure that, if it didn't work out, if it maybe, didn't last for a long time, or I realized, hey, like I can't fucking do this anymore or whatever, or I thought, oh, maybe like, it flopped, whatever. I, could say that it was me. It was because of me and not, I take responsibility for it. And I have genuinely been floored. And when I say the word floored, I want you to imagine in the movie Spider-Man, like the OG, like Tobey Maguire Spider-Man that like I grew up with, Kirsten Dunst, Kissing in the Rain. When I say the word floored, I want you to imagine like Tobey Maguire being like thrown back against a wall, okay? Or like him like shooting his web and throwing someone else against the wall. Like they are being floored in the sense that they are absolutely being sucked back, departing a floor, okay? Like whole body movement, hitting a brick wall. I don't know why that's what I imagine, but I want you all to start imagining that, okay? I have been floored at the amount of fucking people that have listened to this fucking podcast. Like, I don't think you guys realize, like, I feel like I'm just on FaceTime with 3 of you every time I do this. Even when I'm like editing the videos, I'm like literally 4 people are going to like fucking even see these. And then, whatever, the clips go viral on TikTok and I'm getting ad revenue and getting a YouTube check and all these things. And it's so fucking cool that I forget that it's like, I think it's not real. Like I got an email the other day about like, oh, like October, like Spotify ad revenue and the amount of money that it was, I was like, was this the wrong number? I was like, there's no fucking way we did that. Like, holy shit. And you guys, I like, of course, obviously, you guys don't know what goes on in my life necessarily as much. You know only what I tell you and what I put out there, yada, yada.
I promise you that every single dime and cent of the money, the literally, like, I see it still as like the extra money, like the gift, the blessing that I get from TikTok, from, doing the ads that I've been able to start doing on TikTok last year, like 2023. Oh my God, like that was when I finally said, okay, fine, like I'll start actually, you know, doing this and making it a side gig, and making money off it, because I literally made like literally zero fucking dollars off it for the entire time when I built my following, because I was like, you know what, like it's not about that, and it's still not about that. I would do this podcast if it made me $0, and I told myself that in the beginning. I said, you know what, like it actually is going to bring me joy, and I know that people will appreciate it. I'm not sure how many, but we'll see. And it's been a whole fucking lot, and that's so cool. And at the risk of continuing to ramble, I promise you guys that every dime and every cent and every dollar that is extra, that is brought in either from the podcast or from TikTok or from wherever, YouTube, etc., know that it's not just going into a pile of cash that I would have had regardless. It is really so fucking cool and helpful, and helping me do so many things with my life that I never thought I'd be able to do, to, really be able to plan things and to pay off shit and to treat myself and my loved ones, the people around me, the way that I hope I can always, treat them and gift them and cherish them. I'm going to Europe with my sister later this year. She's never been, and I lived abroad in Switzerland for a hot minute when I was in college, and I've traveled to Europe several times. I am a Sagittarius, so I hop on a flight whenever I feel like breathing that day. I'm like, you know what, like let's like book something. And then it's never like booking like a 1 hour away kind of trip vibe. It's always like, let's book something, and then suddenly I'm in fucking Moscow. But like, so fun. Never regretted a single moment. So I'm not only able to take her to Europe, be the one to show her around, of course, because like older sister vibes, right? Like I'm like, I'm gonna do it for you. I'm gonna show you everything. I'm gonna show you the spots. I'm gonna show you Paris, and I'm gonna show you Sweden, and I'm gonna show you Italy, and I'm gonna show you France, and I'm gonna show you Switzerland, and I'm gonna show you Greece, and I'm gonna da. I am able to like for the very first time fly business class there with her, and fly back business class, like feet up in the pod type business class. And like my parents haven't even I think they flew first class like maybe their honeymoon, because like it was like $2 in a handshake to do that back then, and it was like no TSA, and like to Australia maybe, I don't know. And I know that that's such an extra luxurious thing, and I know that I'm so fucking fortunate, and like I could absolutely put that money to so many other things but like, God fucking damn it, isn't it nice to not have to save every fucking cent that you have, always for something in the future, always for something new, always for something that's more important, always for the bills that someone else is going to have chat about, how you should have paid those off and done that or done the other thing. Life is so preciously, brutally, beautifully short. I am not advocating for financial irresponsibility, but this platform and everything that you guys have liked and commented on and shared and loved and DM'd me about has seriously translated to making my life so beautiful and making so many things about my personal life and professional life just so relieving. I feel so relieved when I'm able to do the things that I never dreamed I could do and afford this, afford in the sense of, not feel shame and guilt about spending money on. It's just beyond my wildest dreams. And
yes, I'm an attorney, and yes, I'm an attorney with, like a great income already, even without the TikTok stuff. If TikTok never existed for me, I would be fabulous fine. I would be paid more than a shit ton of people in my field. And I understand that and am privy to that and am so aware of that. And I, do live in California. That is, cost of living is much higher than most places in the country. But that, like, it's never escaped my gratitude and my thought and my thinking that I am so fortunate on my own from what I've built and what I've done on my own with my career and with, my education, with law school and regardless of the student loans. Fuck Uncle Sam. Like, I'm not paying that shit back. Like, forget that shit. Like, I don't give a fuck. But how humbling is it to just see how beautiful and expansive my life can be with the help and the aid and the love and the community of literally millions of people, strangers who have decided to laugh along with me and hang out with me virtually for a few minutes of their day. Truly. And maybe, collectively, for the people probably listening to this podcast, if you added it all up, it's probably adding up to a few hours that we've spent together, maybe days. I know some of the creators that I love. I don't even want to know how many hours I've spent listening to their voice, whether I'm in my car or, just in my bed or just giggling along with my friends, with my sister to their videos. And knowing that I'm that for some people is humbling. It's humbling and it's cool and it's so lovely and refreshing and just a bright star in my life. So I really hope that for all of the bright starness that you guys, bring me, I really hope I bring that to you. And also know that, the larger that this is becoming for me, this being, me gesturing vaguely at everything that I've been doing online, which, that sentence, I think if it had ever come out of my mouth at the age of 17 to my mother, she would have passed away and assumed I was doing porn. Everything that I'm doing online, that translates into income, that translates into cash. It's not just in my mind or in my planning being used to fly business class in loops around the globe. If some scientists, raise their hand and says, hey, we have 3 months to live or an asteroid's going to hit Earth and we're all going to die and explode. Absolutely, that's what I will be doing and I won't feel bad about it. You know what I mean? Like, I will be absolutely taking laps around you bitches. Like, I'm so sorry, but like I'll definitely live tweet the whole thing and like be on TikTok live the entire fucking time. Like, hello chat, you know what I mean? Like, come on. But in lieu of that happening, okay, and in anticipation of that happening one day, the revenue and the income that is coming in is going and will be going to things that I'm passionate about, things that I want to push, things that I want to blow up with my platform and advocate for. And know that you're not just dumping your attention into a huge vat of evil cash that's going to be used for like lip filler. I don't know. Something like that. I'm really excited. I'm so excited to keep talking to y'all and to keep growing this place. I have like high hopes. I don't know what's going on with me right now. I'm like on a soapbox, but I have like a warm tingly feeling. Like, I'm like looking at myself in this screen and I'm like, bruh, like, it's gonna be lit in 2024. I don't know. Anywho, let's get back to business. Thank you for everyone who reached out and was like, hey bitch, hop on your fucking Zoom. We need another episode.
I know we do. I needed the fucking break. Okay. And we are back at it. We are back the fuck at it for episode number 21, I think. Does anyone want to fact check for that for me? I'm going to fact check it myself. Isn't it cool to be able to Google your own fucking podcast that you started in your goddamn living room and look up what episode you're on? 20. Oh my God. We are on episode fucking 20. This is like a moment. Okay. This is a major fucking moment. Okay. 20. Okay. Episode 20. You're kidding. You're joking. You're lying. All right. I would say something super profound and deep and lovely about the 20 episodes, this being episode number 20, but I got nothing. I am deep talked out. So let's just get into it. Yeah, this is going to be a case that I've touched on in a TikTok series. I think it was like a part 1 and 2, okay? TikTok situation, like in 2021, potentially 2022. That was very much in the beginning stages of rumblings in my head of thinking I could do a fucking podcast, man. Like I got shit to chat about. Like we got stuff to break the fuck down. And I talked about this case like in, the 3-minute time span or whatever that I had to do it. It was like before even the 10-minute videos were available. So I had to do it in 2 parts, but I also didn't want to be too long-winded because I was like, no one's gonna fucking listen to this. And yeah, so if this sounds familiar to you, it is probably from me. If you listen to This American Life, they did do an episode on what I'm going to get into, which is called cryonics. If that's mispronounced, I don't give a shit. I'm saying cryonics. It's just never like, look, listen. Is this your podcast? No, it's not. It's mine. Cryonics. Okay. I'm not going to Google it. Look up the pronunciation. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I'm tired. Some shit I will. That I'm not. Like fucking what? I don't care. Yes. This American Life did an episode on like cryonics generally. Okay. Which I will tell you what that is. All right. Let me just get into my fucking intro. Okay. But this isn't just going to be that episode because I'm specifically talking about a specific one case. Okay. Like it's like the equivalent of like doing like, oh, This American Life episode is about cults. Mine is about one specific fucking cult, specifically one person in a cult. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see the difference? Okay. Beautiful, gorgeous, amazing. So I don't want y'all to X out of this fucking episode and be like, I've already listened to this. Boop. Because fuck off. No, you fucking haven't. Because A, it's me, and B, it's a specific case that, fun fact, I didn't learn about this case because it's like famous in the legal community or like it comes up in law school, because it doesn't, or like any other thing like that. I literally found this case actually during my job, through my trabajo, through my job, okay? Billable hour type beat, okay? I was billing hours researching for a motion for a preliminary injunction, okay, in the state of California. And one of the cases that I quite literally ended up citing to, okay, in support of my argument for the judge to grant it, whatever, all right, was found because I was looking at a different court case, okay, that was helpful for me. And within that court case, the judge had cited to this case and their parenthetical, meaning like their like little blurb about the case, okay, that they were talking about, was the most insane fucking thing I'd ever read in my fucking life. I was like, what's up? Like literally like pause, whomst. The parenthetical read, right, injunction, head cut off, suicide denied. And I was like, pardon me, like absolutely slammed the click button so fast on the case, went down the rabbit hole, okay, of severed heads, and came up on the other side, filmed a 2-part TikTok, and now I'm filming finally the podcast episode I've wanted to do about it, the long-winded one, boop boo, for a minute. So here we fucking are, okay? Amazing, perfect, gorgeous. This is the case of Thomas Donaldson. Thomas Donaldson, in addition to having an unfortunate hairline, was a scientist. He was brilliant. His colleagues described him as. He lived in the beautiful state of California, okay? And he
was living, minding his business, doing his research, being a prominent member of the scientific community. He was not only a prominent member of that community, he was into some new age shit. Okay. He was not only into it, he was funding it, he was involved in it. Okay. He became involved in what's called the Alcor Life Extension Foundation. Okay. Alcor, what people call it. Because he was looking to essentially live forever. He said, you know what? Einstein died and we weighed his brain and it was pretty big. But like, wouldn't it be great if my brilliant fucking self and my hairline could be preserved and one day revived forever so that the human race can always have a way to bring me back because I have so much more to say that I don't have time to say. Yeah, he was into that type of shit. Okay. Inside a remote desert facility, hundreds of human bodies lie frozen in capsules, each waiting for their second life to start. One of them lies frozen inside a thermal sleeping bag immersed in liquid nitrogen in an aluminum pod he shares with 3 other preserved humans within a giant vacuum flask known as a dewar, D-E-W-A-R. James Bedford's dewar is stacked vertically along with 145 other frozen people in the Alcor Life Extensions Foundation in Scottsdale, Arizona, a luxury suburb of Phoenix on the edge of the Sonoran Desert. Outside the squat concrete Alcor building, the temperatures can rise to more than 103 degrees Fahrenheit for 8 months of the year. Inside, Bedford and the other humans, with enough ongoing financial support to remain frozen indefinitely, are kept at almost 400 degrees below zero. Bedford was a twice married World War I veteran and psychology professor who toured Africa and the Amazon in the mid-20th century. Bedford is the oldest deanimated or cryogenically frozen human being on Earth. In 2017, Bedford, if he were reanimated, would have celebrated 50 years in the deep freeze. Since his original placement in the dewar, hundreds of people have opted to join him in the hope of a second life in the future. Cryonics is the practice of freezing at extremely low temperatures the body or head of a person who has just legally died in order to preserve it for possible resuscitation at a future time when physical repair and treatment or cure for their diseases are available. We'll get into it. On January 29th, 1992, Court of Appeals Justice Arthur Gilbert issued an opinion, which isn't weird. It's not odd. It's his whole job, right? This very first sentence of his opinion issued on that day reads, quote, "Plaintiff Thomas Donaldson wishes to die in order to live." Most people, I would presume, would like to keep their heads. Thomas Donaldson was not one of them. He wanted his head to be cut off while he was still alive. What was called in the 90s one of the most bizarre court cases in history, which, mind you, clearly whoever wrote that sentence does not listen to this podcast because we have some contenders. See episodes 1 through 19. Donaldson petitioned the state of California to allow him to be anesthetized and then be frozen solid with liquid nitrogen. He then wanted his head removed and placed in a stainless steel thermos bottle while the rest of his body was discarded. Donaldson was not insane. Not completely, anyway. Essentially, Thomas Donaldson needed to commit suicide before his brain tumor killed him. In the 1970s, he had become interested in something called cryonics, the study of the behavior of matter at very low temperatures. He had read about the potential of frozen tissues to be thawed out for future use, and when he heard of a company
that was looking for people to be frozen with the hopes of future resuscitation, he jumped at that chance. The Alcor Life Extension Foundation, Alcor for short, is the company that Thomas, our boy Tommy Donaldson was enthralled by, okay? Wanted to look into and wanted to be involved with, and he succeeded. Donaldson does not just want Alcor's staff to cut off his head, or as Alcor officials put it, surgically isolate it. He wants them to pump an antifreeze solution into it after they cut it off, wrap it in plastic, chill it to the temperature of liquid nitrogen, and store it in a metal canister inside an earthquake-proof tank. The head will remain there until medical science is sufficiently advanced to thaw it and repair the damage done to Donaldson's brain by cancer and freezing. The same technology that will make it possible to revive Donaldson will also provide him with a new body. That's the plan, anyway. Look, I'm not a scientist, right? Like, I'm not a scientist, so I won't really comment. Like, who am I to judge? But I'm judging. Okay? I'm not a scientist, but I am a lawyer. And guess who lawyers are? Judges. Yeah. I won't jury, but I'll judge. Alcor was founded in the 1970s in California with the hopes of enlisting as many people as possible who would agree to be frozen solid after death and stored in liquid nitrogen until technology had evolved sometime in the future to a degree that not only could bring them back to life, okay, resuscitation, but also ensure that whatever disease they were inflicted with while they were alive could be absolutely cured. Okay, so the 1-2 punch. In my opinion, it seems like you're getting greedy, right? I think either it's resuscitate or it's be cured. I don't know. I feel like what if they, resuscitated you and said, oh my God, hey, welcome back. Like, we did it. Like, it's the year 3000. Oh my God. And you look at them and go, okay, amazing. What about that colon cancer? And they're like, ugh. Yeah, so like that's been like the fucking sticky one. Yeah, we haven't really like fucking figured that shit out. We do marathons on the moon now, you know what I'm saying? Like, but yeah, colon cancer is the one thing that fucking God just pulled the wool over our eyes on that one. All right. God said there are too many people on this planet. People are gonna die. I'm so fucking sorry. You can't cure that shit. Fuck off. So yeah, you're gonna die super soon. It's gonna be super painful and horrible and you're gonna waste away. But like, how cool is it that you are alive again? You're welcome. No refunds. Like, you know what I'm saying? Also, it's putting a lot of fucking trust into people, into strangers, okay? Worse than strangers, scientists. I'm sorry, pompous motherfuckers. You think you know everything about anything. You are just so up your own ass. Right, you're brilliant, sure, but like, this is also, some new fucking science. And if you look at the history books, okay, and go to the section titled literally anytime there was ever a new science, the newness of the science, okay, absolutely negatively impacted the outcome of the fucking science in the beginning, at least. All right. Remember bloodletting? Okay. They were onto something. It didn't pan out. Okay. Right. They used to like saw people's legs off to prevent infection. Great. Right. Your great intention. Okay. Your mind is there, but would like wipe their own booties with like their right hand and then like do it barehanded, like cough on the wound. You know what I'm saying? Like everything new sciencey, never awesome, never great. Okay. Like we need a trial period. We need a trial moment. I want to see the first motherfucker revived. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm sure they're not going to be all there. If you watch the show The Last of Us, you know exactly what I'm fucking talking about. Okay. Like, what if you revive me and I know what's happening in my head, but like you somehow injected some shit into my veins that like some parasitic robot type shit is like controlling all my movements, but I have no power over it. Also, completely, such a man fucking thing to do. Okay. Sorry. You are so full of it. What, how many women are on this list of frozen people? And if it's a lot of women, I don't care. I'm rewriting history. No, it's not. Because look, the only fucking people that I've read about so far, okay, who've been frozen fucking solid like a popsicle have been dudes. Okay. Sorry, guys. I love you so much. Thank you for listening. Like, you're allies. But who the fuck do you think you are? Give it a rest. You had your time. You had your moment. Get off the fucking podium. Who the fuck wants to live forever? Who the fuck wants to come back? Who the fuck is looking at the world today, at climate change, at clusterfuck, at everything, okay? And going, you know what? Like, I think my strengths are really going to be utilized 100, 200, 300 years in the future. And it's also like, okay, I understand maybe if you're like, oh, like I had a short life because I died young, you know, and like wasn't able to fully live and, you know, had this disease, like da-da-da. But like King, like maybe you'll be reincarnated. Like think about that. You know what I mean? Like maybe this body like was not, maybe that was the rough draft for this soul of yours. Maybe that's too deep of a thing to say to these people, but like, I'm sorry. Like we need to really have like a sit down, talk to talk, heart to heart, head to head. Okay. Cause right. Your head's cut off, but whatever. If they can hear me, okay, through their comas, okay. If maybe they're like scrolling the web with their like brain cells, whatever the fuck they're doing in Arizona. Okay. With their fucking technology and shit. Listen up. Okay. You don't gotta use the same fucking car, the vehicle that you've been using this whole time that God gave, you know, oh, like one body, one life. If it's one body, one life, then you were dealt a bad hand, call it quits. Like it's going to be great up in heaven. It's going to be fantastic. You can't fucking go. Also, you know what? There's no round trip heaven situation or hell, which I'm honestly more inclined to believe that the people who would want to fucking freeze their goddamn heads and like be brought back to life are probably people who like have done some shady shit. That doesn't feel like very, very like holy of someone. It's always the good die young too. And the good die young always like permanently. The good always permanently die. The evil always spawn again and again and again. Okay? Fuck. Look at Reagan. We're like, name a fucking policy in this fucking shitstorm of a country that wasn't directly impacted by his antics, his shenanigans. You can't. You can't go up to heaven, hang out with all your buddies, your homies, your deceased family members, have the free breakfast at the fucking Holiday Inn. All right. Get a fucking late checkout. Like, King, no, like you're in. Like if you are going to heaven, if you're going to hell, like you swipe your card, that's it. It's TSA, okay? You pass through the metal detector, you're fucking dead. Head is removed from your cuerpo. You can't go back. You already dumped your liquids out. Like you are in here, okay? Like you're getting on this fucking flight and you're not getting off. You can't flip around. You cannot flip around. That's not fair. That's not fair to me. Like I think it's fair. And for anyone who's ever had a near-death experience, you know what I'm saying? Okay, like saw the light type situation, or like literally, you know, were resuscitated, you know, on the table, on the surgery table, ER, whatever, several times, will agree with me because there was no third option for you when you were in the tunnel and you saw the light, or like when your grandma or your mother or whoever, whatever deceased ancestor met you, okay? Like dabbed you up for a minute and was like, yo, like, can you see your body out of body? Right? Crazy shit. Yeah. You got two options. Go back in there or come with me. There was no come hang out for a fucking 2 millennia and maybe hopefully, right, they'll remember to pay the fucking energy bill on that freezer you're staying in. Be fucking serious. I'm not picking any religion that's correct. All right. I'm not playing favorites. I think all of us have some points. Okay. Have several points, including atheists, right? They have some points. But goddamn, okay, just because you can explain to me how you're gonna freeze your fucking head and suspend these people in liquid nitrogen, okay, yeah, that makes sense to me. No, yeah, that's tracking. Donald, all right, Thomas Donaldson, that makes sense. That's not the issue here, okay? If you don't think that there is a world beyond this universe, world, totally fine, okay? No higher power, fantastic. Where are you going to be suspended the entire time? My homeboy, my big G, okay? Where are you going to be floating? Does it seem like a comfortable time? Does it seem like a perfect temperature? Does it seem like you're wearing the right outfit? You're not in a limbo, no man's land situation? Really? Okay. I would love to be as blindly trusting and full of shit as these people. I want to be this delusional and this anxiety free. You really, in order to like literally waste and drop so much of your earth earned, living earned cash and time and attention to funding your post-mortem freezing. I would love to be that sure about literally anything in my life. The possibility of resuscitation and cure with absolutely zero negative spiritual side effects. As you can tell, I've needed this fucking episode for so long. I wanted to chat about this for my whole life. Okay. All right. We're getting into it. Thomas became interested in cryopreservation in the early 1970s and joined Alcor, our foundation, as a paying member in 1975. In 1976, Donaldson published A Brief Scientific Introduction to Cryonics, the first concise review of scientific literature supporting the practice of cryonics. He was a regular contributor to Cryonics magazine, the newsletter of the Alcor Life Extension Foundation, for many years. He also published his own periodical, Periastron, which discussed neuroscience issues as they pertain to cryonics. He had a PhD in mathematics. He went to the University of Chicago and I believe had a master's in Australia, where he lived for several years and taught mathematics at Australian National University. He founded, ultimately, the Cryonics Association of Australia and the Institute for Neural Cryobiology, which has funded groundbreaking research in cryopreservation of brain tissue. Donaldson proposed some of the earliest ideas for cell repair technologies, seeing such technologies as extensions of natural biology, but using new enzymes and solvents other than water for low temperature operation. When Eric Drexler's ideas about molecular nanotechnology came to dominate cryonics thinking in the mid-1980s, Donaldson frequently expressed concern that too much reliance was being placed on the new molecular mechanical repair paradigm to the exclusion of earlier biological approaches. Those are words. The views expressed by Donaldson, specifically on the subject of death, were far-reaching even by cryonics standards, which, based on what I just told you, that is definitely saying something. That is a leap. That is a feat, if you will. According to Donaldson, as long as the brain continues to exist in some kind of repairable form, death, quote unquote, was merely a label indicating that the memory and personality information within it were beyond reach of current technology. Oh, word. So you're glued to this body bag forever and ever and ever as a soul. Give us more credit than that. I feel like I could float away from this skin suit if I had enough reason. While all cryonics proponents would agree with that, with everything Donaldson just said about how death is just, a figment of our imagination and then it's just a label, right? It's just a fucking label. He went a step further than even what they were thinking at the fucking time. Donaldson suggested that people who support cryonics should not just expect that mature nanotechnology, modern technology, will someday clearly answer whether cryopreserved patients are theoretically dead, okay? He was like, stop waiting around for that shit to happen, okay? Like, that's not our end game here. Like, that is not our end goal. Donaldson suggested that increasingly sophisticated methods for decrypting the original information content of injured brains would always keep coming. He wrote of, quote, neural archaeology as an important part of future medicine. He said cryonics in some form would always be necessary because whether certain brain injuries were ultimately repairable would always remain an open question for the future. Interesting. Donaldson also maintained an avid interest in biomedical gerontology, self-publishing the book A Guide to Anti-Aging Drugs in 1994. Despite this interest, he was pessimistic about near-term prospects for extension of human lifespan. In 1986, he stated that only small children might live long enough to see advances, allowing them to avoid the need for cryonics. So essentially, what that just said, and what I'm telling you accurately, is that Thomas Donaldson, this man, very much a man of all mans, said with a straight fucking face, my entire life I am dedicating to get the word out that I want life to last forever. I want all of us to never fucking die. Well, all y'all can. I don't want to. Me specifically don't want to, okay? And in lieu of that technology, some lotion, some skin, some fountain of youth that I could take an absolute cannonball dive into, okay, with my hairline and my glasses. In lieu of that, okay, y'all need to get your knees up, hop on your Zoom and figure that shit out. I am going to cryo preserve my shit. I'm going to freeze my shit, okay? Because that's our second option. That's a plan B that everyone should be doing instead of learning how to live forever. Babes, we don't need to do that. None of us need to do that. And all of the worst people you've ever met and ever known and could ever conjure in your life that are currently breathing in and out, lungs expanding on this earth right now, are the very first people who would line up to dip a toesy into the fountain of youth. And all of the best, most lovely, bright, important, essential souls currently breathing alongside them on this planet of ours would never do that and would absolutely die one day because they were like, yeah, I'm good. I'll let another person take this spot, actually, because all y'all are selfish as fuck. And insanity. It's insane to want to live forever. I think that's insane. Even if, right, I live forever and what I'm going to do, like outlive my kids or outlive like everyone that I love ever, restart my life a million times, like reach the end of my rope when it comes to learning everything. Also, climate change is going to explode this fucking planet and this human population in like 10 years. Okay. That's why I'm not paying my fucking student loans. You know what I mean? Like talk to the core of the earth. Like I'm fucking shut up. Okay. Shut the fuck up. Like why would you want to stick around for the apocalypse? Like why would you want to be here for that? Like God bless. Like God bless I lived in the age of Twitter and the age of this shit where I could like, you know what I mean? Like chap and yap to millions of strangers online about things that literally 99% of the entire human population that's ever lived ever since the beginning of time has never known about and has never ever had the opportunity to learn about. Yeah, I am so happy I lived during this time, but I'm absolutely super happy. Okay. That, very clear and obvious that the apocalypse is almost now, right? We've had a few, we've lived through a couple mini ones already and I'm only 29. The fuck? I just think that's a little bonkers. I think this guy is so full of his shit. I think he's a psychopath. Like I think you're a narcissistic psycho, every kind of path, except for the one that leads you to expire and have a funeral. Like me after dog walking this man and his hairline for 20 minutes, but who am I to judge? Who am I to really say who is wrong or right in this spiritual battle and this race to the finish line when all he wants to do is stay at the starting gun? Be real. Donaldson wrote in a cryonics magazine, quote, "We aim by cryopreservation to reach a time when aging can be reversed and abolished. Like slavery, abolish aging." Right. Cryopreservation may well turn out to be the only way that anyone now living has any chance of doing that, end quote. Okay, King. Who am I to judge? In 1988, Donaldson would indeed learn that he was aging, but more rapidly than a lot of other people on this earth. Thomas Donaldson was 43 when he was diagnosed with grade 2 astrocytoma. The brain tumor had not affected the regions of Thomas's brain responsible for thinking, at least not yet, but would ultimately and inevitably lead to the progressive deterioration of his physical capabilities. Essentially, Thomas learns about this inoperable brain tumor, does some radiation. It's not really working. It's rapidly degenerating. Okay, what's going on in his brilliant, beautiful, absolutely novel, never been done before, never before seen brain. Okay. And the whole point of him freezing himself from jump, okay, from the beginning of this whole venture of his, was that his brilliant, beautiful mind would be fresh, would be good, would be fine. So he is now on a timer running against the fucking clock. He's worried, okay? Because as time goes on, his disease will only progress more. All of those people before him, okay, who had gone into their chambers, who had been nitrogened, all of that, they had already passed, okay? Many of them had passed because of these diseases that they were fingers crossed hoping would be resolved, would be cured once they, could be reanimated, be woken up. He said, well, this is like my brain. And what's the fucking point if I'm reanimated and cured, if my brain is already toast, if my brain has already been mushed, right? Can't come back from that. That's what he thought. Donaldson, because he's an innovator, both with, his haircut and with his ideas, he became one of the most famous people in the cryonics world, okay, the cryonics community. Not really so much within the community, but mostly for how it affected everyone on the outside of it. He became a case because he so very badly wanted his head to be cut off and injected with nitrogen when he was still living. Not a big ask, he thought. Well, legally, it kind of was. At the time, cryonics facilities, which so far had existed only in California and Michigan, had tangled with legal authorities from time to time before this time and around when this case was filed in 1992, okay? But so far, each of their patients, quote unquote, because these facilities do not approve of calling them cadavers. No, not okay, which I'll respect, right? Like they, them pronouns, I get it. Okay, patients. Each of their patients had been frozen only after being pronounced dead, aside from occasional complications like a still unresolved dispute about the proper disposition of human remains. There appears at the time in 1992 to be nothing illegal about freezing a person who made it clear before dying that they wanted cryonic preservation, even if the preservation requires decapitating the person first. Again, dead first, right? It's essentially at that time, up until that time in 92, it had been treated like, okay, like last wishes. You know what I mean? Like, okay, like I want to be buried like with my hair in a messy bun. Sure. You know what I mean? Like, look, it ain't at that point, right? If you got the sign off, if you make sure that your, wishes were communicated to the right people, the forms were signed, the deposits were paid, the government kind of was like, yeah, we don't really want anything to do with that. Like, you know what I mean? Like make sure that your shit is up to par, I guess. Like they were still figuring out how to even oversee these facilities, which now I think they are overseen much more. But right, yes, it's weird and yes, it's woo-woo, but like it wasn't really a negative. It wasn't impacting anyone living, right? It wasn't like calling into question some major issues with bodily autonomy, okay? Because like we don't give a fuck what you do with your body, like after you're dead, like bye. Donaldson threw a wrench into the motherfucking shitstorm and flung it out, and it hit the legal field, okay? Because he didn't want to be frozen after he was dead. He was like, fuck that noise. My brain is literally rotting from the inside out from this horrible, inoperable brain tumor. I'm running against the clock. I have to be smart if I'm resuscitated, or literally what's the point? If he waited until his heart stopped of its own accord, Donaldson says, at the time, the tumor will probably have so devastated his brain that anyone trying to revive it some centuries later will be working with irretrievably damaged material. Quote, I'm sure it would be possible to bring someone back who looks like me and might be told about many of the things I've done, he says, but so much would be destroyed that it really wouldn't be me. I'm in my brain. So far, given our current state of technology, there's nowhere else I can be stored. End quote. So, what Donaldson wants in the world of his legal complaint in 1992 is the constitutionally protected right to be cryonically suspended pre-mortem. If you can imagine, there are a few possible hitches, some of which we'll get to later. The most immediate obstacle is this. In California, as in every other state, what Alcor proposes, causing a person to move from live to dead, in the careful phraseology of plaintiff Thomas Donaldson's attorneys in his complaint filed in California, that's against the law. Deputy Attorney General at the time, Christopher Jorstad, quoted a famous, though fictional detective, quote, "That's murder one, baby," in his opposition to this filing, which essentially was a motion that Donaldson and his attorneys filed to let him be killed. Let me be killed. Murder one, premeditation, you have intent, you have everything. Not only do Alcor members have to worry about prosecution, okay, members being every single person who helped in this process to have Thomas be fucking murdered, all right? Donaldson has to worry about the prospect of an autopsy as part of a homicide or suicide investigation, right? Because that's policy, that's state law, okay? When someone is, taken out of this world, out of this life, killed, there's no one around, okay, who can go up to the coroner, to the police department and say, actually, like, we know for sure that this definitely was a homicide murder, but like he really doesn't want an autopsy. Like, he doesn't want that. Don't do that. That'll fuck up all of our work. Because we need him to be like cut up and frozen in like a certain amount of time. Yada, yada, yada. Like, you can't do that for obvious reasons. Okay. You can imagine why that's a rule. You can imagine why, public policy wise, we don't want to allow for people to, right, be able to go, nope, this one's actually fine. How the fuck, right? How in the fuck can we deal with that? However one views Thomas's chances of revival, it's pretty much fucking certain that defrosting and cutting up his head through an autopsy would probably only hurt those chances. Okay? Probably not be great for the chances of him being revived later, right? Awesome. So, in 1990, Thomas Donaldson and his attorneys and his Alcor doctor member who was going to help him kick the can filed a complaint seeking an injunction to prevent local and state authorities from interfering with his cryonic suspension, essentially from trying to perform an autopsy on his remains afterward or from bringing charges against members of Alcor. Later that year, Superior Court Judge Ronald C. Stevens refused Donaldson's request, okay? That means the lower court, the trial court judge said, no, sorry. He said allowing pre-mortem cryonic suspension would require taking a giant step, quote unquote, from existing case law. Of course, Donaldson appealed. That is what this episode is going to break down. The reason why Thomas is different and the reason why I'm talking about it with like a damn, that's wild joking edge as opposed to one that's very serious is because he, yes, was diagnosed with a brain tumor in 1988. And yes, his physicians literally predicted at the time that he would die by 1993. He, unlike most other patients who request euthanasia at that time, was living with a quality of life that was extremely great. It was not extremely poor. He wasn't in pain. He had all of his faculties at that point. Really, nothing was different except for how he felt during and after radiation treatments, which ultimately didn't take. They didn't work. Okay, the reason why he wanted to end his own life so bad and to have someone else do it is because he was so stressed and anxious and worried that any chance of being reanimated once this tumor progresses would be stupid. None of the other typical normal factors that go into assisted suicide controversies or cases or, ethical and intellectual thoughts and commentaries and debates are at play here, because we're not talking about someone whose quality of life is so poor or who, has no other, the doctors are like, clock's ticking, that sucks. But he was supposed to be chilling until then, besides his brain deteriorating, which sucks, right? Totally sucks. But he was like, I need my head cut off now, right fucking now, hurry. And of course, because things take a while, the appeal did not make it up to the California Court of Appeal until 1992, when in January of that year, our Justice Gilbert issued his opinion with the legendary first sentence that captured my eye the first time I read this case and put me in a chokehold and really didn't let me go until I can finally vent about it and yap about it to you guys. He said, quote, "Plaintiff Thomas Donaldson wishes to die in order to live. Let's get into the appeal, the case. How did this pan out for our boy Tom?" Thomas, as Justice Gilbert states, suffers from an incurable brain disease. He wishes to commit suicide with the assistance of fellow plaintiff Carlos Mondragon so that his body may be cryogenically preserved. It is Donaldson's hope that sometime in the future, when a cure for his disease is found, his body may be brought back to life. Donaldson and Carlos Mondragon, essentially the Alcor member who was going to help him kick the can, brought in action for declaratory and injunctive relief against the state attorney general, the Santa Barbara district attorney, and the Santa Barbara county coroner. Everyone's named, everyone's going to be mentioned. They're naming names. Their first amended complaint sought a declaration that Donaldson has a constitutional right to pre-mortem cryogenic suspension of his body and the assistance of others in achieving that state. The complaint also sought an injunction against criminal prosecution of Mondragon and others for participating in the pre-mortem cryogenic suspension, and another injunction against the coroner performing an autopsy on Donaldson's body after death. Let me break that down for you. Let me translate for those who are not lawyers or law students in the chat. You are able to file a complaint, basically a request, right? You're asking the court, the judge specifically, because a judge's word is, right? Bible is law, essentially. Their opinions are law. You can file a complaint asking for them to simply say something. I kid you not. That is the simplest way to describe what a declaration is like when you're asking for declaratory relief, You can literally file a lawsuit in court, Yes, it has to be against somebody still. It can just be filing a piece of paper and being like, please say this. It's a lawsuit, You have to allege claims that make sense. One of those claims can be, you can ask for declaratory relief. You can literally be like, hi, can you just please say that this person owes me money? Can you please say that can you please say that this contract clause says this? You can ask the court to pretty much say a lot of shit, Because it's not necessarily relief that you're asking for by saying that. You're not asking for the court to demand that someone pay them back. You're like, can you fucking say that? You're asking mom and dad to mediate and be like, say that he broke the vase. It's going to be law. It's going to be Bible. I know y'all think I did it. Can y'all investigate this shit and say that he broke the vase so that, you know what I mean? I don't get blamed for it the rest of my life. Yes, he broke the vase. Amazing, perfect, gorgeous. My brother's now going to have that on his name and my name is cleared. People ask for declaratory relief all the time with respect to victims too. If you're a victim of a crime, if you're a victim of harassment, discrimination, you can have you can request, hey, can I have a declaration that said I was wrongfully terminated, whatever. To clear your name. Yeah. All right. So in this sense, the declaration part of this lawsuit was asking for the court to declare, I do declare, asking for the judge to write on a piece of paper, therefore declaring that Donaldson had a constitutional right under the California and federal constitutions to pre-mortem cryogenic suspension of his body and the assistance of others in achieving that state. So not only just cryogenic, okay, suspension of his body to pursue while still living, but also assisted suicide, murder, the ability to choose that people will kill you in order to achieve that state, okay? That he has the constitutional right to that. That is a massive fucking ask, okay? That is a humongous fucking Moby Dick ask, okay? To literally say as law, it's not just in a vacuum. Nothing's in a vacuum, you guys. That's what I hope that you have gathered, at least if you've listened to any of the 19 episodes previous to this one. If this is your first episode, look, write this shit down, put it in your brain, put it in your noggin. Nothing in case law is decided in a vacuum. Nothing is only applicable to that case, okay? When it comes to a judge's opinion and order, a statement, a declaration, absolutely not. They have to think about all the moving parts and the public policy perspectives of handing down an opinion, because if an opinion is issued, is written, stamped, and printed, yes, obviously, right? It's going to apply to the specific facts of that case. But once a judge's opinion is issued, that is good law. That's law, all right? It's good law for anyone else to cite, to point to use as reference, to use to support their case. Like, I mean, so much of our society and our laws, I would say almost all of it, okay, is judge-made law. Statutes and laws that Congress makes are literally the tip of the fucking iceberg. They're pretty much useless. You think in law school we were studying statutes? We weren't. We fucking weren't. We were studying law the way we see it, which is cases, okay? Because cases can evolve, they can be overturned, right? Like, that's how law expands. That's how law, it's organic, okay? It's an organic thing. It's not like some all-seeing power. One judge has all the power. I know that it really seems like it lately with the Supreme Court and things that they've been doing that have been off the fucking rails. But, for the last however many years in our society, the rule of thumb is that the checks and balances of it is when judges fuck up, there's a system where, they will be checked by the appellate process, the appeals process. And also even after, a case is issued, anytime a case is a completely unrelated case, right? 20, 30 years later, if the court years and years later decides, actually, that rule that we applied, right, or have been applying this rule, okay, that the sky is purple, actually, we think that's fucked up. We don't like that rule. That rule was wrong. We were wrong. We fucked up on that. The sky is blue. That means, right, in issuing that, they're overturning all the other cases that said the sky is purple. You know what I mean? So, like, and I know this is the most basic fucking way to explain it, but, like, it's easier to explain it like this. Y'all aren't going to be lawyers. I'm not worried about it, okay? If you're a law student about to be a lawyer, like, please don't use my shit. Don't use that description as fucking Bible, okay? Please don't. But that's basically like how to describe it to just regular people who don't really want to know the ins and outs. They just want to know the fucking overview basics, okay? So for someone to literally ask you, a judge, all right, hey, do you mind literally saying that I have a absolute constitutional fucking right alongside my right to fucking speech and my right to fucking counsel at a fucking criminal trial, right alongside all of those rights, you need to say right now that I have a constitutional founding father ass right to be cryogenically suspended, okay, and to have someone kill me and be allowed to be killed, even though it's against a lot of like murder one, baby. But yeah, I have that right to choose that. What does that mean? Rebuttal chat. Oh, that means that anyone can cite that case and say, oh, I have that right to, I have the right to, I have the right to, I have the right to, right? Public policy. It's never just him. It's always everyone else, okay? Because if he has it, everyone has it, right? Except for his hairline, I ain't that different than him and his logic, but that's neither here nor there. Who am I to judge? So That was his first ask, declaration. Okay, declare. His second ask, all right, was he wanted an injunction. Okay, an injunction is an order from a court order, a judge forcing someone to stop doing something. Okay, that's the most common one. There's another one that's like you can force someone to do something. Those are like harder. This is literally an injunction saying, I am enjoining you. That's like the verb. I am enjoining you. I am stopping you from doing this thing. Stop it. Stop it right now. Okay. People seek injunctions for so many fucking things. Okay. They can stop you from selling a company. They can stop you from firing someone. They can stop you from spending the money that is in dispute, until the case is over. The list is endless. Okay. Come up with ideas. It's probably been done. He here is seeking an injunction, an order from a court saying, you're not allowed to do that. Stop it. That basically prevents the Santa Barbara District Attorney from criminally prosecuting the Alcor members, including Mondragon, his co-plaintiff, for participating in the pre-mortem cryogenic suspension of Donaldson. So for killing him. Okay. An injunction saying you're not allowed to prosecute them for that. It's actually going to be the get out of jail free card. They're asking the court, the judge to say that. Okay. Say, no, you're not allowed. Okay. Do not do your job. Right. The second injunction they ask for, the third thing, but the second injunction. Okay. We got declaration, injunction 1, injunction 2. Injunction 2 says that they want the court to issue an order stopping the coroner from performing an autopsy on Donaldson's body after death. Okay, so you are asking two people from doing basically from doing their jobs, the coroner and the prosecutor's office, district attorney. Okay, those are the asks. What do we think, chat? What do we think? And what is the rationale? It's actually interesting. I know you guys know the answer. Like, I know you know what's going to fucking happen. But like how the court gets there is interesting because there are a lot of moving parts that have to do with like, okay, like, well, can't a judge just tell him to stop it? Like, why is that? Right? Like, really, when you think about it, okay, like, yeah, they could. I mean, this guy, right? He's not really hurting anybody. It's just him. You really have to try to put yourself into someone else's shoes and also really realistically think about it in the sense of, okay, like, what's really the problem? I know I explained to you that this is all far reaching and it's scary because anyone can ask for this shit, whatever. And we can come up with a bunch of different scenarios where this can get criminally dicey. You know what I mean? But we can all admit that Thomas Donaldson's case is not really criminally dicey. Like there aren't people who like are looking to kill Donaldson and get away with it, right? Like maliciously. This Thomas Donaldson is not senile. Okay, and making decisions that he doesn't have the capacity to make. He's not making a rash decision. He's been thinking about cryonics for 20 years. You know what I mean? Like he's an extremely published mathematician, cryonics enthusiast. He's written papers. He's gone to conferences. Like he knows what he's doing. Okay, and who are we as a society, as a judge specifically, to say you can't do that? And mind you, right, saying you have a constitutional right to that shit to while you're living, okay, to be killed, totally understandable why that would be crazy. But like, what's the problem with the injunctions, right? Like, just fucking give this guy a pass. You know what I mean? Like, have him write on a piece of paper that says, I think he's fair, like everything's fine, no one killed me. Don't prosecute these people and don't do an autopsy on his body. Like, what's the problem? How is that different from all the other bitches who were frozen before him? Yeah, they died first. But like, you didn't perform autopsies on them, right? Like, you probably like were like, nah, we won't do that. Like, what's the problem here? Okay. What's the problem? This is what he said in his complaint, essentially, the summary, right? Plaintiff Thomas Donaldson, a mathematician and computer software scientist, suffers from a malignant brain tumor diagnosed by physicians as a grade 2 astrocytoma. The astrocytoma is a space-occupying lesion, inoperable, and continues to grow and invade brain tissue. The tumor has caused Donaldson weakness, speech impediments, and seizures. Ultimately, continued growth of the tumor will result in Donaldson's persistent vegetative state and death. Physicians have predicted his probable death by August 1993, 5 years from his initial diagnosis. Donaldson desires to be cryogenically suspended pre-mortem with the assistance of Mondragon and others. This procedure would freeze Donaldson's body, as we know, to be later reanimated when curative treatment exists for his brain cancer. Following cryogenic suspension, Donaldson will suffer irreversible cessation of all brain function, including circulatory and respiratory function. He will be dead, according to the definition of death set forth in California Health and Safety Code, Section 7180, because of course we have a statute, every state does, that tells you what exactly dead means, because as we always know, people try to loophole it, okay? People try to argue their way out of kicking the can. Many a time, right, this argument, or I guess an argument that implicates the definition of death is raised when a prisoner, an incarcerated individual, potentially incarcerated for a, quote, life term, all right, maybe has a medical event, a heart attack, dies on the table, right, and is revived. They have petitioned before, their lawyers have petitioned before for essentially a release, full release, because they've served their time, because their life ended and they had a life sentence and their life ended. And just because they got a second chance doesn't mean that they didn't serve their full term. Those arguments have failed for reasons that we are not going to get into here today. But yeah, there is a definition of death that we have all agreed on. Shaking hands, that's what it means. This definition, okay, in specifically California Health and Safety Code Section 7180 is, quote, an individual who has sustained either 1, irreversible cessation of circulatory and respiratory functions, or 2, irreversible cessation of all functions of the entire brain, including the brainstem, is dead, okay? Dead as a doornail. Donaldson, here in this case, seeks a judicial declaration that he has a constitutional right to cryogenic suspension pre-mortem with the assistance of others. Alternatively, he asserts he will end his life by a lethal dose of drugs. Mondragon will, quote, advise and encourage Donaldson through suicide to, quote, minimize the time between his legal death and the onset of the cryonic suspension process, end quote. Yeah, if you can imagine the way that they believe, all right, Alcor believes that cryonic suspension will be successful, involves and requires a lot of, right, body preservation techniques, things that they, need your body to be the state that it is in order for this to presumably work, okay? It's not like a bunch of dudes in a room chopping heads off willy-nilly. There is a procedure. It seems pretty formal. It seems like they have a handbook, I'm sure. I don't even want to know what the fucking confidentiality, release, disclaimer, informed consent waivers look like. I can imagine it's about as thick as a Cheesecake Factory menu. Moving on, recognizing that Mondragon will be committing a homicide or alternatively aiding and advising a suicide, Donaldson and Mondragon wanted to get ahead of the ball. Okay, they wanted to already, all right, stop the state from fucking up their plans. They therefore sought by this case an injunction protecting Mondragon from criminal prosecution in order to not destroy Thomas Donaldson's chance of reanimation. They also seek a court order to prevent the county coroner from examining Donaldson's remains. Donaldson and Mondragon based their action upon asserted constitutional rights of privacy and free expression. Every state has its own constitution, okay? We know the big head honcho, big final boss constitution, the federal U.S. Constitution, okay? But in addition to that, all 50 states have their own. These constitutions, right, cannot contradict the federal constitution in the sense of they can't go against it. Okay. They can't do something that would be in direct conflict with the federal constitution. However, every state has the right and the reason and the privilege, okay, to expand on the federal constitution's baseline protections. Okay. The federal constitution is the goalie. All right. They're the last hoe in the hustle. State constitutions are like the defenders. Okay. They might stop you way before the goalie does. Okay. If you want to start violating people's rights, et cetera, it might have been technically, potentially fine under the federal constitution, but not under California's. All right. One of these examples, all right, is that there is no right to privacy codified in the federal U.S. Constitution. All right. If there were, you would have heard about it. California did indeed codify a right to privacy under Article 1 of its constitution, which doesn't mean that there's some all-encompassing right to not have people in your business. You are going to absolutely have people up your schnoz and in your fucking situation, in your drama, in your tea. Okay, duh, right? And obviously, you know, if the right to privacy was really that broad, why in the fresh fuck would Hollywood be here? Celebrities live here, like up in your business. No, the right to privacy in the California Constitution, I guess, more so in how I have dealt with it, which I've dealt with it a lot, actually. It is implicated and sued upon, meaning that a lot of lawsuits can be based on this article, right? They're like, hi, you violated my rights, see Article 1, California Constitution, based a lot on privacy in the context of medical procedures, HIPAA violation type stuff, also in terms of consumer rights. All right. There are a lot of laws that the California legislature has specifically spearheaded and been, you know, one of the first states to like start, you know, years ago, when all of these widespread companies online, on the internet, et cetera, were exchanging information with each other, you know, sharing consumer lists, right? And like your email, your private info, your address, there are obviously constraints on that. I know it doesn't really seem like it, but it gets complicated when you know, other countries' companies can do things, or you know, when it's across state lines. The internet is complicated. I'm not saying that California's constitution is, you know, keeping you scot-free, foolproof in California. Obviously not. Duh. But right, those are the types of issues that provision is intending to cover, implicate, or at least, you know, be some kind of helpful, como se dice, deterrent from certain violations of someone's privacy. Privacy meaning not just shit that is embarrassing, okay, that you don't want out in the atmosphere. Also shit that, but not also. It is shit that is like what a reasonable person would believe as a society is sensitive information. Your social security number, your medical information, your address, your email address, even your phone number. That's technically considered, you know, sensitive private information, because if you know, someone has that, or a company has that, or you're, you know, willy-nilly, like your employer is sharing that shit with people just because they, you know, subpoenaed them for that info, and then all of a sudden, like your shit is out there. Yeah, it implicates that. So often companies, when they are responding to, for example, subpoenas, okay, for information, for example, Verizon, okay, if you want to subpoena Verizon for someone's phone records because you were trying to establish, you know, like who they were talking to at a certain time, and it could be in a civil case or a criminal case, okay? All of the examples that I have directly been involved like civil cases, okay? Like look and listen, like business disputes, okay? Let's say that, for example. Verizon always, okay, like their legal team, when they get a subpoena, are like, yeah, we'll totally respond to the subpoena, but like under California Constitution, you know, section like Article 1, you know, private consumer information, you know, we are going to black out literally every other thing going on except for the narrow information that you are requesting, and that is substantiated by the subpoena, you know, like pending objections and shit, right? I know that's like high level, complicated, whatever, but that's just an example and a hemplo of why maybe potentially Thomas Donaldson and his friend Mondragon, whatever, and Alcor sued in California State Court and implicated first and foremost California law because, they could have filed in federal court, based their entire lawsuit on the federal constitution, but they knew they'd probably be shut out of luck. Assisted suicide is, of course, a contentious topic, especially at this time in 1992 when this appeal was ultimately decided. There are states that have since 1992, legalized, assisted taking of life, okay, in certain circumstances, like in very discrete, very narrowly tailored situations. And this would not be one of them. I'm not very knowledgeable on specifically what those are. And, I opening up another tab and me doing research on it and then telling you about it would make this episode about 2 more hours longer than it needs to be. So leave it at that. All right. So what did the state of California, okay, the attorney general specifically, who is tasked with defending the state of California and its employees and operatives in court, what did they do in response? Well, when plaintiff Thomas Donaldson and Mondragon and his Alcor buddies, when they filed in Santa Barbara, for the motion for the declaration and these 2 injunctions, they opposed. Of course, California's going to oppose. They're going to be like, pause, hold my beer, hold up, wait a minute. No. They filed a demurrer, which is a dumb fucking way. Demurrer, literally DEMURRER. It's a motion to dismiss in federal court and in any fucking jurisdiction that make fucking sex. Okay. I don't know why we call it demurrer. I fucking hate it. Oh, it's a demurrer, like a motion to dismiss. Okay. They filed a motion to dismiss the complaint, claiming that Donaldson had no constitutional right to an assisted suicide and could not consent to his murder. Fair point. They also raised procedural challenges to plaintiff's actions. So like claims that, they hadn't stated a claim properly, yada, yada, yada. The trial judge, okay, at the Santa Barbara County Superior Court level, ruled in favor of the defendant, okay? The state of California and all these hoes, Santa Barbara County Coroner, all of them, the defendants. They dismissed the complaint, and because of that, the plaintiff Donaldson and his buddies appealed. Okay, and this is that appeal. On appeal, these are the issues at hand. All right. On appeal, they contend 1, Donaldson has a constitutional right to pre-mortem cryogenic suspension, and 2, Donaldson has a constitutional right to receive, and Mondragon has a constitutional right to give advice and encouragement concerning Donaldson's suicide. Here is the court's analysis, which I apologize in advance for if you think this sounds like me reading a lot. I promise you, this opinion is just chef's kiss exquisite. I love when a judge just has absolute bars and doesn't require a whole lot of fucking filler, but gets to all the issues in a way that fucking makes sense and that anyone can read and understand, and takes me on the ride that I want to be on, hands up, wooing for my mom, because pretty much every time when you, as an attorney or as a layperson, regular person reading this opinion, every time a thought comes into your head, like a challenge or an opposition to what the judge is saying, what the court is saying, they pretty much address it. Like they're like, we know what you're about to say now, so we're going to address it, which is nice. And of course, in a contentious and high profile case like this that got national media attention at the time in the 90s, the associate justice wanted to make sure that there was that this wasn't just a willy-nilly hack job. They were like, no, we're going to be sensitive to the very controversial but also emotional topics that are at play here. And I do, as an attorney and as a person, appreciate when judges do that, when, even if the answer is so obvious, like even if you're like, be fucking real, you can't, of course, we're not going to give you a declaration that says you're allowed to consent to your own murder for public policy reasons 1,000. Okay. But right, they're not going to say it like that. They're going to make sure that they explain to everyone who is impacted by something like this, to anyone who really wants to go through cryonic suspension, fingers crossed, to anyone even who is in a quality of life, a life whose its quality is so low that they are considering assisted suicide. They want to make sure that their concerns are addressed, and they want to make sure they're not just saying, fuck you, we don't care. Because like, we would like to think that we care. And this is one of those opinions that I feel like does that really well. And I do think that, you know, for all the shit that I can absolutely talk and do always talk about how judges get shit wrong, I do give flowers and tens when I feel like they got it right. So let's get into it. This is the court's analysis. Donaldson wishes to achieve cryogenic suspension of his body pre-mortem before his relentlessly advancing brain tumor destroys the quality and purpose of his life, reduces him to a vegetative state, and makes futile his hope for reanimation. Whatever Donaldson's motivations are for dying, however, he argues his right to privacy and self-determination are paramount to any state interest in maintaining life. He reasons that the state of California has no logical, secular motive to demand his continued existence, given his medical condition and prognosis, which, on my worst days, deep in a depression in my life, I could have also argued this too. What could I give you? Nothing more. Therefore, there should be no balancing of interests where the state has only an abstract interest in preserving life in general, as opposed to Donaldson's specific and compelling interest in ending his particular life. What that balancing of interests reference means and is referring to is that when there is a challenge, okay, a constitutional challenge to essentially the state stopping you from doing something, okay, or like interfering, yada, yada, all right? Here, it's the constitutional challenge based on Article 1 of the California Constitution, all right? There's something that's called scrutiny, okay, that the court has to place on that challenge in their analysis of deciding what the right answer is, okay? There are 3 levels of scrutiny, okay? Strict scrutiny, intermediate scrutiny, and then the last one is rational. It's like a rational basis, okay? Rational basis is like basically whatever, like really, really easy, the easiest standard, okay? Essentially, what the court does, all right, if the state is you know, objecting to something that a person's doing and a person's like, these are my rights, fuck you, these are my constitutional rights, you're violating them in some way, shape, or form, because I do have a right to privacy and this is violating it. There are obviously, of course, times when the state, the government, whether it be federal or state, does indeed technically on paper limit or restrict or maybe even perhaps violate your technically constitutional on paper rights. One of these examples is your right to be free of unreasonable searches and seizures, right? What happens when that is violated? It doesn't mean that they violated the Constitution when they violate it, quote unquote, if they show that they have a right, probable cause, reasonable, right? It's a reasonable search and seizure. They have a warrant. They went through all the procedures that we have decided is adequate due process for you to be seized and searched. That, right? Of course, when something like that happens, okay, like someone is literally like a warrant is issued, they have probable cause and someone is arrested for this, that, or the other thing, and it wasn't a violation, seen as a violation of someone's Fourth Amendment right to unreasonable searches and seizures, that is technically because, right, we have just decided that under these tests, okay, strict scrutiny test, the state's interest in detaining people when they have all of that probable cause, warrant, et cetera, all of those procedural things ticked off, that is an interest of the state that outweighs the other person's interest in being free of searches and seizures. Does that make sense? Amazing, perfect, gorgeous. Okay. So when the court engages in a scrutiny test, okay, And whichever level of scrutiny the court applies depends on, like, it's like black letter law, like which one you apply for which right or which whatever. I'm not going to get into that because like they I'm pretty sure applied strict scrutiny here. We'll get into it. Okay. Strict scrutiny. Basically, strict scrutiny means that the state's interest, okay, in violating, quote unquote, this person's right or restricting it or restricting their right, in this case, ability to end their life or be murdered, consent to their murder, the state's interest in stopping what Donaldson wants to happen outweighs Donaldson's interest in consenting to his murder and not having everyone be prosecuted and not having an autopsy, okay? That interest, in order to outweigh Donaldson's, has to be a compelling interest. The state's interest has to be very compelling, okay? Compelling meaning like super top of the level, so fucking compelling, okay? It's like one of the top tiers, okay, of an interest. There are a bunch of ways that the court determines whether something's compelling or not, and you're going to learn, okay? Why, right, the state's interest is or is not compelling, but also, right, in order for the court to decide what that fucking interest, whether that interest is compelling, the state, okay, the attorney general has to communicate and verbalize what those interests are, right? Like the court's like, so what's your interest, right? Like what's up? And he's like, these are our interests, okay? So you will be able to open up your mind a little bit more into what, right? Because like, look, I want you guys to actually think about this case as if you were like pro Donaldson. Even if you're not, okay, even if you're not, I want you to think, okay, like, what is the big deal here? Like, what is the problem, right? Like Donaldson said, the state has no fucking logical, secular motive to demand his continued existence. In light of his 5-year taking time bomb diagnosis, I'm going to die soon. It's 1992. Like, right, I got about like a few years left until I kick the can. I think it's like 1994 when he was supposed to, the doctor said he was going to die. Like, what's the fucking problem with this? Like, you don't need to do any of this shit. This isn't like you're like saying murder is okay. Be serious. You know what I mean? Like, just give me what I want. Like, you shouldn't even be involved in this. Like, you should not even be a factor in this because, like, right to privacy, it's my business, not yours. Okay? Amazing. So, what Donaldson was arguing, his attorneys argued, is that there should be no balancing of interests where the state has only an abstract interest in preserving life in general, right? Like, not like a compelling, specific, direct interest in stopping Donaldson from doing this. Donaldson rests his contentions upon judicial decisions declaring the right of a competent patient, his guardian, or surrogate to refuse medical treatment or procedures that sustain life. In general, a person has a constitutionally protected interest in refusing unwanted medical treatment or procedures. This constitutionally secured right derives from a liberty interest found in the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution, the big one, and in California from the right of privacy found in Article 1, Section 1 of the California Constitution. The right of patient autonomy has been described as, quote, the ultimate exercise of one's right to privacy. This right to medical self-determination also derives from the legal doctrine of informed consent to medical treatment, of course. A logical corollary of the doctrine is that a patient possesses the right not to consent and to refuse treatment at any time. Whether asserting these rights rests upon the United States Constitution or the California Constitution or the decisional law of informed consent, whether by statute or by judge-made law, right? We get it. A patient may refuse treatment even though withholding of treatment creates a life-threatening situation. For example, in the case of Buvia versus Superior Court, a California case that had been decided in the 80s, the court held that a 28-year-old quadriplegic cerebral palsy victim may indeed assert her constitutional right to refuse nasogastric hydration and nourishment, basically life-saving, right, treatment, like a feeding tube type thing. Okay. The effect of her doing that would be that her conditions would be her demise. It wouldn't be that someone else's actions would be her demise, which is what Donaldson is asking for. Well, not demise, right? Let's be politically correct in the Alcor cryonics world. What is it? His transition from life to not life would be his demise. Look, I can't. Moreover, the right to refuse treatment or life-sustaining measures is not limited to those who are terminally ill. In that same case, okay, in the case of the woman who was a 28-year-old quadriplegic, she had a life expectancy of 15 to 20 additional years, okay? And the court still held in that case that, yes, she has the ability to refuse unwanted medical treatment if, her decision is to expire much earlier, all right? The requirement to refuse unwanted medical treatment is not that you will be dead in 10 minutes. It could very well be that, you could live much longer even without the treatment, or it could very well be that with the treatment you'd live much long, like you'd live like a long and healthy life, okay? Which like the state's interest in not letting people commit suicide, technically, right, refusing unwanted medical treatment if they're going to live a long, happy, prosperous life. Yeah, there's an interest in that. It's not zero, it's not nil, but the individual's compelling interest in their own right to privacy and their right to bodily autonomy and choosing that they don't want to be on this earth, this mundo, for longer than that in the condition they're in, that is their right. In another case, in Bartling versus Superior Court in California as well, the patient was seriously ill and ventilator dependent, but not quote unquote terminal, and they still were allowed to exercise their right to refuse unwanted medical treatment. To determine whether Donaldson has suffered a violation of his constitutional rights, the court must balance his interests against any relevant state interests. Pertinent state interests here in Donaldson's case include preserving human life, preventing suicide, protecting innocent third parties such as children, and maintaining the ethical integrity of the medical profession. The state may also decline to assess the quality of a particular human life and assert an unqualified general interest in the preservation of human life to be balanced against the individual's constitutional rights. Meaning that, like I told you, like I said before, every single case decided is not in a vacuum, okay? Just because the facts of this particular case, yes, are at issue, doesn't mean the state isn't allowed to consider the broad-reaching policy effects, okay, on allowing such a thing, even if it would mean justice for one or constitutional integrity for one person. If it means that the interest in preserving life generally, the state's interest in preserving life generally would be limited, or that, right, it would be impacted if this was a copy and paste to everybody, it doesn't mean that the state isn't allowed to assert that general interest, okay? So basically, off the bat, Donaldson's attorneys, when they argued, oh, the state only has a general interest in life, that's bullshit, immediately the court said, okay, the state's allowed to assert that. Like, case, like cite to a bunch of cases in which a general, right, seemingly enigma interest in some like morally sound thing, that's allowed. Like the state can have that. Like, goddamn, like they can have that, okay? Decisions regarding the right to refuse life-sustaining treatment, including hydration and nourishment, distinguish between artificial life support in the face of inevitable death and self-infliction of deadly harm, aka suicide. Likewise, other court decisions hold that a physician incurs no criminal liability by terminating life support measures when a patient chooses to abandon such treatment, all right? Of course, even though that seems obvious and logical, right? When we've already upheld and handed down and affirmed in this state the right of a patient to refuse medical treatment, okay? Even though it's guaranteed to lead to their death, cases, of course, have come out to say, essentially, when right, the individual who's choosing that, their loved ones might not be happy about it, okay? They might be really pissed. They might fight tooth and nail for that to not happen. And then because the patient was allowed to, choose that, and then the doctor turned off the machine, they may, have pursued the doctor and saying they should be prosecuted because they technically murdered someone, which is technically correct in the sense of technically, yes, like they did take an action which they knew would be the cause of which would be the end of someone's life. However, right, this is where the exception applies. There's an asterisk there. Someone's refusal of unwanted medical treatment is protected because that interest is more compelling than the interest in the state in prosecuting doctors who simply do what the fucking patient's telling them to do. within limits, within ethical limits. Okay. Amazing. The rationale of these decisions is that natural death from underlying illness is merely forestalled by life support measures. Okay. The whole forestalling idea and principle is a heavy theme here. Donaldson acknowledges these decisions, those court cases that are mentioned by the court, concern patients in persistent vegetative states or patients otherwise dependent upon life-sustaining measures in order to be alive. But, Donaldson argues, a refusal of further medical treatment is a legal fiction for suicide. Quote, as is often true in true times of social transition, case law has created fictions to avoid affronting previously accepted norms. In life support termination, Donaldson argues, there is a fiction of medical determinism. Patients are seen as passive victims of their own illness. They do not choose to die. Death overtakes them. Their physicians do nothing to help them die. Death overwhelms them too. End quote. Donaldson's attorneys kind of were spitting fucking fire, like on the beat. Like I know, like I'm not saying fire as in the sense of like, oh, they're 100% correct. I'm saying like, damn, that reads well. I love a good brief writer. Like fuck legal writing. It's a hard thing to learn. It's a hard thing to do well. I love when someone else other than me does it well. I'm just kidding. I do think I'm good at it, but like you get it. Okay, you get it. It just reads, it flows. It reads like water, like a stream around a rock, seamless. Okay, it's not like squeezing fucking liquid out of a Capri Sun pouch. Like, fuck, like get to the fucking point. Okay. Donaldson argues that the doctor who disconnects the support system is taking affirmative action that in fact causes the death of the patient. He points out that even if the doctor assists the patient to die by doing nothing, he or she is actively participating in ending the patient's life. Quote, not doing anything is doing something, which is absolutely a bar and a half, okay? Correct. It is a decision to act every bit as much as deciding for any other deed. If I decide not to eat or drink anymore, knowing what the consequence will be, I have committed suicide as surely as if I had used a gas oven, end quote. Whew. The court responds to this argument by Donaldson's attorneys and says, there may be, yes, an apparent similarity between the patient and doctor and Donaldson and Mondragon, but in fact, there is a significant difference. The patient, for example, who is being kept alive by a life support system has taken a detour that usually postpones an immediate encounter with death. In short, the medical treatment has prolonged life and prevented death from overtaking the patient. Stopping the treatment allows the delayed meeting with death to take place. So the judge is basically saying, oh yeah, that was a fire passage. Let me respond fire with fire. Because I'm sorry, the caliber of legal bars happening right now, just God tier. I love it. That's why I don't love this case in the sense I love what's happening. I just enjoy when I can just read from a fucking opinion to you guys without having to do backflips, a cartwheel, and a round off front spring to fucking basically rewrite the fucking opinion myself, type it out, and read it to you guys. Because I've had to do that so many fucking times when some judges, I'm like, what in the action? That is not it at all. Why would you say it like that? Anyways, soapbox, take it away. Take it away from me. Donaldson is asking that we sanction something quite different. Here, there are no life-prolonging measures to be discontinued. Instead, a third person will simply kill Donaldson and hasten the encounter with death. No statute or judicial opinion countenances Donaldson's decision to consent to be murdered or to commit suicide with the assistance of others. Donaldson, however, may take his own life. The court literally says, and this is not funny. It's not funny, but I'm gonna make light of it because that's what I do. Okay, dark humor, dark humor, dark humor. Welcome to rebuttal. The court basically says, my guy, hold the knife, hold the gun, kill yourself, kill yourself. Like literally, that's what the court says. Literally, kill yourself. Go die. Go down that sewer slide, baby. We won't stop you. That is your right. We are allies. Literally kill yourself. The court had to say, kill yourself. You are so fine. Green light. Green means go. Green means go. He makes a persuasive argument that his specific interest in ending his life is more compelling than the state's abstract interest in preserving life in general. No state interest is compromised, my boy Thomas, by allowing you to experience a dignified death rather than an excruciatingly painful life, end quote. I just love the way they word it. It's so like, you know, like they don't make light of it. They're they understand, look, we understand that it absolutely is someone's decision to not lead an excruciatingly painful life. Like, more power to you. Nevertheless, even if we were to characterize Donaldson's taking his own life as the exercise of a fundamental right, it does not follow that he may implement the right in the manner he wishes here. It is one thing to take one's own life, but quite another to allow a third person assisting in that suicide to be immune from investigation by the coroner or law enforcement agencies. In such a case, the state has a legitimate competing interest in protecting society against abuses. Of course, this interest is more significant than merely the abstract interest in preserving life, no matter what the quality of that life is. Instead, it is the interest of the state to maintain social order through enforcement of the criminal law and to protect the lives of those who wish to live no matter what their circumstances are. Okay, so essentially, if there are people who are in excruciating pain and would be a candidate to have someone take their own life, or if there are people who maybe would be a perfect candidate for cryonics but like literally don't want to do that, they want to live, they want to be here, like that, we're protecting their interest too. Like, we don't want this to become a thing where people are then pressured to die just because the state, or this idea that the state doesn't have an interest in their life and in protecting it. We should, and across the board. This interest overrides any interest Donaldson possesses in ending his life through the assistance of a third person in violation of the state's penal laws. The court cannot expand the nature of Donaldson's right of privacy to provide a protective shield for third persons who end his life. Donaldson argues that his right to die is like a citizen's right to vote, however. An invalid, for example, may need the assistance of a third person to get to the polling booth. Donaldson argues that in similar fashion, his claimed right to take his life carries with it the right to assistance in exercising that right, which is, again, a pretty good argument. Like, look, like, I hate the player, hate the game. Like, his lawyers really put their whole yesy into it. In the example of the invalid voter, the court says in response, the state has no competing interest to prevent assistance. Quite the contrary, the state's interest is to encourage its citizens to vote. In the case of assisted suicides, however, the state has an important interest to ensure that people are not influenced to kill themselves. I wonder if TikTok will take this bar when they take down videos that like I bully people from, you know what I mean? Like when I'm like dog walking someone who's a fucking piece of shit, misogynistic bigot, racist motherfucker, they just send me to this paragraph in this case for the reason. We have an important interest to ensure that people are not influenced to kill themselves. You're influencing people to kill themselves. Sorry. The state's interest must prevail over the individual because of the difficulty, if not the impossibility, of evaluating the motives of the assister or determining the presence of undue influence, okay? Undue influence we got into with the Body Behind the Wall case, okay? That was like episode 3, 4 or something like that. Fucking insane, crazy. Okay, the body behind the wall. Undue influence in someone signing a will, a trust, right? Basically your capacity, okay, mental capacity to do something. You might sign away your fucking whole life, but of course the court isn't going to uphold it if, you were unduly influenced, you were threatened, you had someone else who was holding your hand and forcing you to do it. And in this case, someone might be unduly influenced to take their own life. And that's like a whole nother can of worms that is going to be hard to even fucking, have a standard for. Like, are you unduly influenced or not? I don't fucking know. To this, Donaldson argues, constitutional rights do not depend on there being a fail-safe scheme, nor may they be deferred because of the difficulty in devising a procedure to implement them, which is a decent argument in response. The court says, the court's like, we agree with the general proposition that the difficulty in effecting a solution to a legal problem is not sufficient, grounds for a court to deny relief. This also, is implicated in the whole idea of people who are, very judgmental and rude and gross and vote to take away, unemployment benefits or food stamps, etc., because they're like, oh, right, they're people who could easily, curve the system and be on it when they don't deserve it, whatever the fuck, lie and say they don't, whatever. And in response to that, it's the risk that a smaller percentage of people will be unfortunately benefited when they shouldn't be is not reason enough to fuck the whole idea because of the sheer number of people that it will help. The people who will absolutely qualify and will be helped and should be helped should not be fucked over just because of the risk that a few little bitches, little lying, deceptive thieves will be able to benefit also from the system. Be fucking serious, okay? So that's my parallel. Soapbox, take it away again. However cumbersome, the court says, it is conceivable to devise a judicial procedure to supervise Donaldson's assisted death. They admit that. They're like, it is conceivable for us to come up with a fucking procedure to make sure that this is all fine, okay? The court, however, does not embark on such an enterprise because we hold Donaldson has no constitutional right to a state-assisted death. Moreover, the court may not enjoin public officers from performing official acts that are required by law for them to perform. They cite Civil Code Section 3423 and the Code of Civil Procedure Section 526, which provide that injunctions may not be granted to prevent officers of the law acting for the benefit of the public pursuant to statute. So, right, Donaldson is asking the court to issue 2 injunctions to stop the county coroner and prosecutor's office from doing their jobs. There are procedures and statutes already put in place that say, like, you can't really fucking do that, okay? The coroner is required to inquire into deaths involving suicide or homicide, period, under California Government Section California Government Code Section 27491. Okay, they are required to do that. They have to. Mandated shall situation. Okay, they don't have a choice. And to carry out his or her inquiry may take custody of the remains and examine the body of a homicide or suicide victim. See Government Code Section 27491.2 and Health and Safety Code Section 7102 in California AA. Quote, it is unfortunate for Donaldson that the courts cannot always accommodate the special needs of an individual. We realize that time is critical to Donaldson, but the legal and philosophical problems posed by his predicament are a legislative matter rather than a judicial one. Correct. Many a time, the courts, the judges, right, will say, yeah, separation of powers, right? The 3 branches type beat, okay? Executive, judicial, legislative. Sometimes problems will land on our desk in the judiciary, in the legal field, as lawyers, as judges, etc. And we know full well that, look, if you would like the legislator to pass a statute that provides for relief, justice, the enforcement of your right to consent to murder here, you're going to have to ask them to pass a statute. We can't do this for you because under the constitutional right mandates and the laws that we have right now, we can't carve out a hole for you. Sorry. Next, Donaldson argues that at the very least, he has a constitutional right to receive advice and encouragement concerning his suicide. California Penal Code Section 401 provides, quote, every person who deliberately aids or advises or encourages another to commit suicide is guilty of a felony, end quote. I don't know if you guys knew that, but in 1992, that was codified. That was in law, okay? Donaldson asserts this section unconstitutionally interferes with his right to privacy. He relies upon the concurring opinion in Buvia versus Superior Court. Quote, this state and the medical profession, instead of frustrating Buvia's desire, the 28-year-old quadriplegic who wanted to pass, should be attempting to relieve her suffering by permitting and in fact assisting her to die with ease and dignity. The right to die should include the ability to enlist assistance from others, including the medical profession, in making death as painless and quick as possible, end quote. Donaldson also relies upon scholarly thought proposing that suicide assistance be decriminalized under certain circumstances. Suicide or attempted suicide, the court notes, is not a crime under the criminal statutes of California or any state. To be clear, okay? The court was like, don't get it twisted. We're not saying that what you're doing is necessarily illegal in terms of you wanting to die. The absence of a criminal penalty for these acts is explained by the prevailing thought, to which Donaldson and others would disagree, that suicide or attempted suicide is an expression of mental illness that punishment cannot remedy. That was like the prevailing thought at the time in the 1992, okay? Do not yell and scream and come for me, okay, in the comments right now. That is not an opinion, I don't think, of the court, the judge writing this, or me, of course. He, like, literally, that was the rationale that was used in order for suicide to not be criminally like a crime, okay? Like for people who survived attempted suicides, like they're not criminally punished. Why, you may ask? Oh, because that's fucking insanity, okay? That's fucking insane. And two, what that derives from, even the public sentiment or the public push for that to happen, because it like used to fucking happen, like it literally used to be a thing. People wanted is very much grounded in like a religious idea that like this is a sin and like you need to be punished for it. Okay, yeah, that's not a crime. Okay, and the court notes it here, and the rationale behind that not being a crime in the legislature is that people always just assume that people who wanted to commit suicide or tried to were mentally ill, and like us putting you in jail or making you pay a fine like isn't really going to remedy that. So like you're on your own. That was the rationale. And of course, that I know and you know and we know, any rational, reasonable person knows that that is not, as someone who knows many a person who has taken their own life, made that choice, choosing to take your own life can be the least selfish thing that you ever do. It can be the most devastating thing that you ever have to consider, and devastating thing that your loved ones may have to grapple with. But to endure a life, your body, your mind, your experience for as long as you did, for you to stick around, for you to keep breathing every day, was a feat. And no one could ever take that away from you, and no one could ever understand that, and no one could ever understand the excruciating pain that you, that person, right, who took their own life, had to endure and grapple with every day that they stayed on this earth. And yeah, of course, yes, of course, everyone should have people and resources around them to do everything in their power to lessen that pain and to keep going and to stay on this earth and to live, right? Because every life is precious. Every breathing life is precious. But those individuals, maybe who you are listening, like I guarantee you're listening right now, the individuals who know someone who took their own life, it is a very unfortunate club to be in, but it is a very, it's a very strong club in the sense that the people that we loved so dearly who made that decision, right? We can only hope and pray that they found that relief. And what a blessing it was to have known them and be with them for the time when they were here. What a gift. So, just wanted to make sure that that was clear. That just because that sentence saying that, oh, the reason why we don't criminalize suicide is because it's just, you're just mentally ill. You're just crazy. That is not an opinion that I hold, or I think the judge holders, or I think that many people hold. Yes, mental illness can of course come into it. But again, it's still an illness regardless. So moving on. The court notes that a majority of states, however, impose criminal penalties upon one who assists another to commit suicide. One reason for the existence of criminal sanctions for those who aid a suicide is to discourage those who might encourage a suicide to advance personal motives. Of course, another reason is the belief that the sanctity of life is threatened by one who is willing to participate in taking the life of another, even at the victim's request. A third justification is that although the suicide victim may be mentally ill in wishing his demise, the aider is not necessarily mentally ill. So basically, the rationale is like, look, someone's got to be fucking sane, which is just fair, but those are the rationales. These reasons justify a criminal statute punishing the aiding and encouraging of suicide, and that's why they exist, although suicide itself is not illegal. The state's interest in such a situation involves also much more than just a general commitment to the preservation of human life, okay? In Cruzan, one of the cases in California that the court cites to, the state opposed discontinuing nutritional procedures for an unconscious patient with severe brain damage, absent clear and convincing evidence that this was the patient's wish. Cruzan emphasized the state's interest in guarding against potential abuses, which is a positive public policy initiative that we would like our government to push, right? If I'm in a coma and I'm a vegetable and I maybe, in my mind, would have in this situation, like not wanted to, stay conscious, stay alive, don't take me off the device, off the supporter. If that were my want and wish, I wouldn't want, right, just because a bunch of people around me who aren't me say that they think that this would be my wish and do it, I wouldn't want the state, the government, to just be like, all right, good point, bye. There has to be clear and convincing evidence that at some point, right, this would have been my wish. And so they've looked at diary entries, conversations, like wills and trusts and all of these things that this person did or said while living that would show it was clear and convincing that if they knew that they were in the situation and they were here with us now to talk to us, they would say, yes, pull the plug. And that's why in many wills, trusts, estate planning documents, people provide for those things. They literally say, if I am in a coma, which is defined as this, you know what I mean? Like zero brain activity, this, that, the other thing, no chance of me waking up, doctor, like obviously there's a bunch of conditions on it, right? Of what they consider to be like point of no return. Doctors have said this shit's fucked. They might even put in a fucking will that you're required before you pull. Yes, I want you to pull the plug if all these things are present. I'm in a coma and this, that, the other thing for this long and there's no hope, but I also require that you get a second and third opinion from other doctors. Like you can do that. And that would be clear and convincing evidence, right? That if all those things were checked off, that this person would have wanted you to pull the plug. But the case in Cruzan, which this court, this Donaldson court is pointing out, is just that, look, like Cruzan said, look, we're not going to fuck around, okay? You got to show us that this is absolutely something that they would want. Third parties, even family members, do not always act to protect the person whose life will end. No fucking shit. The sky is blue, the grass is green, and I am at my wit's end. Cruzan stated, quote, "We do not think a state is required to remain neutral in the face of an informed and voluntary decision by a physically able adult to starve to death." Absolutely. Here, the state is no less required to remain neutral in Donaldson's case, okay? Isn't this, I just love being a lawyer. I know it's just so cheesy and nerdy and gross and some people are like, get fucked, but I really do love appeals. I love appellate cases. I love when we just want to get to the right answer, not the political one, not the leaning one, not the skewed one, the one that tracks. And this tracks. Do you see how it tracks? Even if you didn't even think about these types of things, it tracks, okay? Mondragon, the Alcor member, who's going to assist him in his suicide, in his movement from life to frozen popsicle, Mondragon contends he has a constitutional right of free expression, secured by the United States and California constitutions, to counsel and advise Donaldson in his suicide. He points out that suicide is not illegal and argues that the state may not prohibit speech that encourages a lawful act, okay? Artful pleading here. I actually love this argument too. Freedom of speech type B, you know what I mean? It's giving First Amendment type B. It's giving like, hey, like, it's not illegal for him to commit suicide. So I'm pretty, like, I can encourage someone to write on a piece of paper, which is not illegal. You can't punish my speech in that sense. I'm punishing, right? Or you're punishing my speech when it's completely fine for the outcome to occur. That's the argument. Which, like, yes, it's going to lose, but like, good argument. It's the only argument you got, right? It's the best one you got, I think. We disagree. The court disagrees, okay, that Penal Code Section 401 impairs Mondragon's exercise of free speech. Our Supreme Court, California's Supreme Court, has interpreted Section 401 to require affirmative and direct conduct, such as furnishing a weapon or other means by which another could physically and immediately inflict a death-producing injury upon himself. Okay, that is obviously the statute which criminalizes assistance or encouragement of suicide. Quote, to satisfy the burden of Section 401, Mondragon would have to, 1, have specifically intended Donaldson's suicide, and 2, have had a direct participation in bringing it about. The constitutional guarantees of free speech protect the freedom of individuals to speak, write, print, or otherwise communicate information or opinion. Abstract teachings or advocacy of ideas are protected as well. Regulation of conduct bearing no necessary relation to the freedom to disseminate information or opinion is not constitutionally protected. Mondragon enjoys no constitutional protection for his planned participation in Donaldson's suicide. Therefore, the judgment is affirmed, aka the judgment dismissing Donaldson and Mondragon's petition to enjoin the state from giving him an autopsy and prosecuting Mondragon, and for a declaration declaring that Donaldson has a constitutional right to consent to his own murder. Denied. Okay. So what happened then? This is 1992, may I remind you. And he had, what was it? Until 1994, his doctors were saying, until he would be out, right? Be out and about. So where does that leave our plaintiff, Thomas Donaldson? Of course, the irony of all of this, okay, his prognosis was that he would absolutely, for sure, die by 1994. Thomas Donaldson lived for another almost 2 decades. Over almost 2 decades, a decade and a half. After this case was decided, like, despite all odds, literally the doctors were like, damn, this is crazy. Okay. Like, holy shit. He literally like was like, oh, you're going to tell me, no, I can't kill myself, or I can't consent to have someone kill me. Okay, well then I'm sticking around, bitch, because I like, fuck y'all. I'm gonna be brilliant here then in this time period. God fucking damn it. Like, y'all ruin all the fun. I guess I'll survive. Okay, I guess I'll live. While Donaldson's cancer did go into remission for several years after this case was decided, which is great, right? Amazing, perfect. Like, holy shit, I'm glad. The cancer did return in 2004 while Thomas was living in Australia. So he got out of the US, he was like, fuck this noise, and left, okay? As his condition worsened, he flew to Scottsdale, Arizona, where he remained in hospice until his legal death. Thomas, who became Alcor patient A-1097 on January 6th, 2006, had wanted to end his life before his brain tumor produced irreversible damage. Obviously, this was not a right afforded to him, but given that Thomas's brain was irreversibly damaged prior to cryopreservation, the hope is that by the time vitrification is reversed, so essentially by the time he's able to be reanimated, the technology will exist to repair any tumor-related brain damage. Okay, so as we speak right now, Thomas Donaldson is preserved as patient A-1097 in the Alcor facility in Scottsdale, Arizona. His head was separated from his body and injected with liquid nitrogen and frozen to a temperature of upwards of negative 400 degrees Fahrenheit and put into an earthquake-proof capsule while his body was discarded. And it is resting where it will remain for, I think, as long as the energy bills are paid. Since Thomas Donaldson's case, okay, and since he became patient A dash whatnot, so many hundreds of people have chosen to be cryonically preserved. He is one of many, a person, a whole lot of guys who have decided that they want to, have a second chance once shit gets to a place where we can reanimate people and cure all of their diseases. Okay. He is often, though, because of the legal implications of this case that were so novel, right, at the time and profound that, it wasn't just assisted suicide, it was suicide with a twist. He has been one of the more famous patients that have done this, that have been cryonically preserved, and one of the famous proponents of cryonics. There have been several cases that have come out in the United States since this case was decided in 1992 in California that have addressed cryonics and a person's right and ability to consent to their murder, okay, to suicide with a hand. And I would get into them, but I don't feel like it, so look them up. Obviously, many more states since this case was decided have passed laws which allow for assisted suicide in more cases, in more circumstances. But I think that the court's decision in Donaldson versus Lungren, the California Court of Appeals decision, and all of the legal principles and constitutional guarantees and legal analyses that are included in that decision remain sound and are, of course, still sound law with respect to the state's interests and with respect to, what exactly that interest is when we talk about assisted suicide, when we talk about a person and a third party being involved in ending their life. And again, like I said, I've literally cited to that case for principles with respect to injunctions because in a case, I was an attorney. I was an attorney. I still am. Filed for preliminary injunction. Still good law. Not archaic and interesting. Very fucking interesting. Thomas Donaldson seemed to be pretty confident that he would be back someday. Okay, of course, you could have gathered that from listening to this episode and from learning about him. He gave many an interview prior to his death in 2006 with magazines, with people, everyone, to talk about cryonics and his experience and why he very much believed that people weren't technically dead when they died and that the technology would eventually catch up. In a 1982 interview, when asked for a piece of wisdom to pass on to cryonicists, he said, quote, "I am sure that any profound piece of wisdom I might have would seem really rather stupid in 300 years. So I think it would be better for me to say nothing so that I don't feel ashamed of myself when I wake up in 300 years. This has been an episode of the Rebuttal Podcast. My rebuttal for this episode is that God, do I love a cold popsicle on a hot summer day. And I do indeed enjoy other people's passions that they talk about with fervor and litigate in court for me to read about. If you are a proponent of cryonics, more power to you. Absolutely loving the way your mind and your house and your lawn works and operates over there on your side of the street. Happy to protect and defend your right to demand that your body is done down, dressed down a certain way after you die. But I will say on record right now that when I one day leave this earth, my soul does indeed detach from this body bag that is so cute and gorgeous and lovely. Really lucked out in that department. That you maybe try keeping my head on. My cuerpo, my body, that would be lovely and fantastic. That would be amazing. I want to be cremated. Anyways, love you guys. Hope that this was enjoyable. Follow us everywhere, Instagram and Twitter. And please like, comment, subscribe, review, watch on YouTube for my facials, for the visuals, for the photos of this guy's fucking hairline. Love, love, love. Bye.